Welcome to the Smart Fit. Today we're making a classic American dessert and personally my favorite, pumpkin pie. Although we're making everything from scratch, this is a very easy recipe. From the flaky crust to our homegrown squash and the combination of warm spices, this pumpkin pie is perfect. I mean, just look at this. Enough said, let's make this. We're going to start with our foundation, and by foundation we mean the pie crust. While it might be intimidating to make this, it's surprisingly easy. We need 113 grams of cold butter cut into cubes, very important that it be cold. Into a large bowl, sift 150 grams flour, a quarter teaspoon salt, and 1/8 teaspoon sugar. Just tap that until everything passes through. The salt will add contrast to the sweetness and the sugar will keep it, well, sweet. Now add 2 to 3 cubes of cold butter into the flour and using 2 forks press down the butter and mix that into the flour. That's it. There's nothing fancy to this process. Just use the forks to break down the butter. Or as the English say, the butter. You know when it's done when the biggest pieces of butter are no bigger than the size of a pea and it looks like this. Keeping with the cold theme, you're gonna need ice cold water. Measure, drizzle, and incorporate 1 tablespoon of water into the flour mixture. Then repeat a second time, and maybe even a third time. We're adding 1 tablespoon at a time because we're hydrating this flour until it barely starts to come together. We want it drier than wet and looking like this, where there is little to no dry flour and it might start to hold together. Using the forks instead of your hands keeps the butter cold, and the main point of this is, yes, you got it, keep the butter cold. Working quickly while you handle it, roll it into a tight ball, wrap it, and place it in the fridge for at least 30 minutes up to 24 hours. After a little siesta, we remembered we were making this video, so take the pie dough out of the fridge to shape it. Generously flour the cutting board, the top of the dough, and the rolling pin, or else it'll stick and we'll be sad. We could have made this part better by shaping it into a disc instead of a ball before placing it into a fridge. This would have given us a head start, but you live and learn from our mistakes. Like this video so far? Excited to see the final product? Let's go Thanksgiving, like, subscribe, hello. Anyways, roll it out as closely shaped to circular as you can get. That is not a circle. Okay, for real, this is nothing like a circle, but this is perfect to show you that it's okay. This is gonna come out great anyways. Use a bench scraper to release the dough, fold the dough in half, and then half again to transfer it into the pie pan. Place the corner in the middle and unfold it to have a nicely centered pie crust. Lift and press the dough into the corners to maximize the surface area. We're pretty much finished. Here's a neat trick. If you've got some imbalances, take the dough from one area and transplant it to the other, press firmly, and no one will ever know. It'll be our little secret. From here, we're going to cut off the excess baggage using a sharp knife to trace along the edge of the pie dish. Next part isn't necessary, but it's so easy. I don't know why you wouldn't spend 30 seconds doing it. Flour your fingers, then gently lift and press the edges of the dough against the space between your thumb and index finger. And repeat all the way around, and in no time you've got something like this. So worth the extra 30 seconds. Place in the fridge for 30 minutes up to 24 hours. Alright, Thanksgiving is around the corner and pumpkin pie is my favorite. 30 minutes later or the next day, or honestly you could have done this step right away. Add oven paper to the pie crust and add uncooked rice or beans to weigh the center of the pie down. Gently press that into the corners and place in a 205°C or 400°F preheated oven for 12 to 15 minutes. Take that out, remove the pie weight, poke countless holes into the bottom to prevent it from rising while baking a second time. Definitely do not skip this part, or you're gonna be sadly disappointed with a big poofy mess and the last 2 days of your life gone. Place in the oven for another 10 minutes. Just like watching boiling water, the more you stir, the quicker it finishes. 10 minutes up and we've got lightly golden edges and a gently cooked center. That's what you're looking for. Yeah, it's imperfect, and so what? After you've eaten so much turkey, you're not even gonna notice. Okay, so let's get the pumpkin part going. If you watched our other video, you know we are in Spain and the American pumpkins are readily available. We use our homegrown squash instead and have had great success. For the purpose of this video though, we're gonna call it a pumpkin, okay? Lop off a chunk of pumpkin, that was hard to say. Slice that into smaller, more manageable pieces and peel off the edges, or cut off the edges. Cut and cube the pumpkin, removing any fibers in the center before placing on a foil-lined baking sheet. From our experience, we've found that baking with the convection setting on with the top and bottom burners gives us the best results for softening, lightly caramelizing, and removing moisture from the pumpkin. So bake in a preheated oven at 205°C or 400°F for 20 minutes. When all finished, probe a piece to check for doneness and then transfer all the pumpkin to a fine mesh strainer to help get rid of any extra moisture. The way we cooked the pumpkin this time gave us great results, and we didn't have to strain the pumpkin for too long before adding it to the blender and pureeing it. To puree or to blend? That is the question. Oh yeah. For this recipe we need 430 grams more or less of pumpkin puree. Bada bing bada boom, and we're in the ballpark. Preheat the oven to 165°C or 330°F, and while that's warming up, we can get the pie ready, and it's really easy. In a large bowl, add your freshly made pumpkin puree, followed by 400 grams of condensed milk, which is going to add natural richness and sweetness, 2 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk, which we're going to mix separately to make sure that they're completely smooth before adding into the bowl. A little whisk here, a little whisk in the big bowl. Yeah, mix, and bring the flavors together. Once it feels smooth, add half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon ginger, 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. This right here is what you call autumn spices, and are a combination of warm, comforting flavors that make this dessert special. And every other dessert in the fall tastes exactly the same. Give it a few final stirs to disperse the spices evenly, and we're done. Take your pie filling and carefully pour it into your pie crust. Here's a tip. You need to give the pie some gentle taps to encourage any bubbles that might be at the bottom or in the middle to rise to the top and get out. If not, you might end up with gaps in your pie, and I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so tap it. Or don't, because some of you just like to mess with me like that. The pie crust is already baked, so if we throw this in the oven without covering it, then it will burn before the pie is finished cooking. So the solution is to create a protective layer of aluminum foil and cover the edges without covering the pumpkin filling. Once your alien spaceship is ready, place it in the oven for 70 minutes, not 110 minutes. I know what you're thinking. That's an ugly pie, and what happened to it? Well, it's baking, and when things heat up, they rise and expand, so relax. If it looks like this, don't panic. Just give it some time to cool and settle. You act like when you came out of the oven, you were super chill. You were probably kicking and screaming. If you want, you can even leave it outside to cool completely while you make some whipped cream. When serving pumpkin pie, you top it with whipped cream. No negotiating here. To a large bowl, add 250 milliliters or 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. And don't forget 1 tablespoon of powdered sugar. We made a video recently on how to make whipped cream by hand, so we don't want to hear you crying about, I don't have a luxurious beast of a machine like this, so I can't make whipped cream. Use some elbow grease and that forearm strength. Beat it on high for 60 seconds if you're using a machine like I am, or until it looks like this. After your pie has cooled completely, then cut up a slice and carefully remove it from its dish. And check that out. See how it's not puffy anymore and it looks rich and uniform in the center? The bottom of the crust is holding strong and the crust is buttery and flaky. Yes, this is gonna be so good. Again, the crust was easy to make and a complete game changer. I guess you could use a store-bought pastry puff, but this is better. Also, you could dump some whipped cream on top and devour the pie if you're a savage. Or if you want to be a little extra, a little next level, and you know that the presentation of the food is just as important as its taste, then you can create some quenelle, or quenelles in English. Place a large spoon in hot water and then lightly glide the spoon over the whipped cream, and with another hot spoon, smooth out the edges and place that onto your pie. The pie is rich and just sweet enough. It's got those familiar warm notes from the cinnamon and cloves. The bottom of the crust is strong enough to hold the pie and gives a nice contrast in texture and flavor. The edge is amazing, light, crispy, buttery, with a touch of salt to balance the sweetness of the pie. The whipped cream is light and not sweet, which damn complements the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed this recipe and give this pie a try. Give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, The Smart Fit Recipes. If you've got pumpkin or squash in your house, then try this recipe.